On behalf of Purina, I want to discuss two specialized diets from Purina, the Pro Plan Veterinary Diet EN and EN Fiber Balance. The EN formula is designed for general gastrointestinal support, featuring a balanced blend of soluble and insoluble fibers to promote healthy digestion and manage GI sensitivities. It's ideal for dogs experiencing gastrointestinal disturbances such as vomiting and diarrhea, pancreatitis, gastritis and enteritis, and inflammatory bowel disease. On the other hand, EN Fiber Balance takes it a step further with an enhanced fiber content specifically aimed at improving the microbiome. This formulation is particularly beneficial for dogs suffering from fiber-responsive colitis, large bowel diarrhea, constipation, and diabetes. Both diets are crucial in managing GI health. To learn more, please visit www.proplanvet.com. Welcome aboard. You're listening to Flight Plan Quick Consult, your go-to podcast for veterinary insights that are fast, focused, and designed to elevate your practice. I'm your host, Brenda Tassima-Medina from Encore Veterinary Consulting. Whether you're between appointments or heading into a strategy session, we've got takeoff-ready tips, tools, and takeaways to keep your team soaring. So buckle up as we make our way to our second destination in our three-part Beyond Burnout series, Caught in the Middle. Why veterinary managers feel trapped between teams and leadership. Our great panel of Julie Squires, Josh Vaisman, and Susie Crockett have returned for this leg of our journey. Thank you all for being with us today.
Thanks for having us.
We're jumping back into the VHMA Practice Manager Burnout Study, and one of the most revealing findings was not exhaustion itself, but what is causing it. So the managers in this study reported internal workplace factors that significantly contribute to their stress, external demands contributing heavily to the stress. And I think these were things that we touched on our last episode as we closed that one up. Feeling caught between owner expectations and the team's needs. I think that is a real big one. And then spending excessive time putting out urgent fires instead of working strategically. And then finally, feeling responsible for team morale, despite lacking authority perhaps over the root causes that are really bringing the morale down. So with all of that in mind, which is a big old ball of wax, I'm going to throw our first question over to Julie Squires. Julie, how can managers effectively lead when they're accountable for results, but don't always have authority over the decisions driving those results?
I feel like that's the age-old question, right? It's like like what a big profound question, because that is so much of the conflict or the friction is whether or not there's alignment with, the practice manager is in such a unique position. They're sort of, I always think of them as like they're like the conduit between the team and upper management and upper leadership, right? And sometimes that's an individual, sometimes it's a board, sometimes it's a corporate group. And finding alignment with that, I think, is really difficult because the practice manager is the one that's listening to all of the gripes and the groans and of the team, of the things that aren't working. And they're trying to serve those up, perhaps to, upper management who may have a different agenda. They may be looking at different things. So this becomes such a point of not, of stagnation, I guess, that this, I think, is such a big cause of manager burnout because they feel once again like, where am I supposed to move with this? This is what the team wants, but upper management is looking at different things, different metrics, and we're not able to actually move here. And perhaps that's why they need to bring someone like Josh in to help, get some of those things aligned so that there is consistent vision and there is consistent pathway forward. Like, I don't have the answer to that. So
I don't expect you to have all the answers, but but it is a tough one. And I think I when I became a consultant and when I started working with practices, that was where I really saw the difference in terms of my role. And I'm not a practice manager, and I didn't realize I was in such a tight spot between my team and my practice owner at the time. But afterwards, it was like, oh, this is a completely different dynamic, actually working from a place of coaching and consulting with practice leaders in this particular area. And I think it was easier for me to kind of point out those misalignments and help work through some of those tough spots. Susie, you're in a little bit of a different role in that you have 9 practice managers that are working directly with you, and then you have your upper leadership to respond, that you're responsible to. So how do you set your managers up effectively to succeed because they aren't 100% accountable. I mean, they're accountable, but they're not 100% autonomous, if you will.
Yeah, and that's exactly kind of where my brain went with this question because I think it really depends on the structure of your practice. So, if I'm working for a small practice, single independent owner with 3 doctors and 15 staff, this answer is very different than if I'm working for a multi-site company that's independent or a large corporate with 100 practices across the country, and I may not even know who my upper management even is. And so I think you have to start with where you are because if I work for a smaller practice, truthfully, the first thought I had is ask for what you need because I may only have one person that I'm reporting to. And I think sometimes we forget we're in this position because we're trusted. And so tell them what you need. And sometimes that helps. It doesn't always help. And if it doesn't, then the next thing, and I tell my managers this because they are responsible, but they don't have all the authority. I try to give them as much as possible, but focus on what you can control. You can only play the hand that you're dealt. And I think sometimes people are really trying to keep going, go fish, go fish. Go. Like you get the cards that you have. So what can I do with that deck? And so how can I make sure that my communication is appropriate with my team on the vision and the goals of the company? And let them know the why behind the how. It's very much the same as in clinical skill. I can tell you how to draw this or how to intubate, but I need you to understand why. And so telling your team why we're doing certain things, I think that's really, really key. And making sure that you control the work processes in your practice. And are you doing them? Are you executing them well? Those are things you can control. You can't control that patient visits are down across the industry. We can't control the state of the financial health of the country. So we're not, why put my energy in that space? Let me put my energy on the things that I actually can make a difference to.
Great points, because I think being perfectionists, we might tend to internalize a lot of those things that we can't control. Great, great points. Josh, what's your take on this particular question?
Yeah, the first thing that I was thinking about as you brought this up, first of all, I think that the title, Caught in the Middle, is so apropos. There's a meta-analysis that I read, I don't know, sometime in the last couple of years. It's a relatively recent study that was done, and they looked at essentially well-being metrics, like workplace well-being metrics, through the prism of 3 different strata. So you could think of this as sort of like those on the ground. So this might be our technicians. By the way, this was not a veterinary study. This was a generalized, industry agnostic study. But to put it in veterinary terms, you could think of our CSRs, our technicians, our associate veterinarians, our kennel techs, so on and so forth, right? Folks on the ground. Then our middle management folks. So this might be like our technician manager, our practice manager, office manager, medical director, so on and so forth. And then senior leadership. So this could be hospital owner, it could be, a regional director, it could be CEO, C-suite, whatever, right? Fairly consistently, on average, the lowest levels of well-being tend to occur in middle management. And it's interesting when I think about this, I think to myself, like that actually kind of makes a lot of sense. The folks on the ground, like they said, they know what they're getting into. They know that they're going to be expected to do a lot of stuff and they're not going to have a lot of authority over how things are done, right? Like you kind of go in getting that, and that's not fun, and nobody loves when that happens. But if you have the mindset, you understand that that's what it's going to be like, you can sort of accept it or learn to live with it or tolerate it to a certain extent. pretty consistently, the folks at the top tend to have the highest well-being. So that makes sense to me too, because they've got the most power and influence within the organization. They have a lot of autonomy to control the direction of their day-to-day experience. Totally get it. Again, to use your words, Brenda, middle management is literally caught in the middle. You have all these expectations and demands, and you feel as though you should have a certain amount of autonomy and influence to deliver on those demands, but often you have less than you want. And that tension creates a lot of problems over time. So my advice is going to wholeheartedly echo what Susie said. I think that there's two ways to kind of think about this. I'm just going to use like slightly different words to say exactly the same things that Susie advised. I think of role constraints as like the extent to which I have decision latitude within my role. It's like, what is the bubble around me that I can move around in? An associate veterinarian is going to have a certain amount of decision latitude. They get to decide, what I don't know, what differential list they pick from in a particular patient. They get to decide what medications they prescribe. Like they have a certain amount of decision latitude that a technician is not going to have, right? That technician is also going to have a certain amount of decision latitude. This is how big is the bubble I get to move around in? So the first piece of advice to practice managers is, instead of thinking of it in terms of autonomy and control, think about, how can I maximize the influence within my bubble? How can I make sure that I'm really filling the bubble to its full extent and use whatever influence I have to help me achieve my goals? And that influence goes in both directions. It's, what is the influence you have over the team day to day? How can you use that influence for good so that you can push good outcomes that you're after? It also means managing up. How can I maximize the influence I have with the people who have more status and more power than me in the organization to ensure that they are helping me achieve the goals that they expect of me and that I want to achieve, right? So use influence, maximize the bubble. That's the first thing. And then the second thing, 100% echoing what Susie said, ask for what you need, and think about it bidirectionally as well. Like, ask for what you need from the team to help you achieve your goals. I mean, that could be as simple as sitting down with somebody who works for you and say, listen, you and I are on the same page here. We want to make sure that we're maximizing patient care and outcomes here. What I need from you is to help me figure out what you need to succeed, right? Like, ask for that. And then we can do that up as well. Susie, you've asked me to achieve XYZ this quarter. What I need to be able to do that is 4 hours of admin time uninterrupted at home each week. Is that something you can offer me? Right? Like, I can ask for that and see what she says, but I'm using my influence with, this is what you've asked me to achieve. This is how I plan to achieve it. This is why I need that to achieve it. That's using influence. Now Susie gets to decide if she's going to let me do that or not, right? And that's out of my hands because I don't have that control. So yeah, again, maximize the bubble, use your influence both directions as much as you can, and ask for what you need in both directions.
Love it. Love it. And think about it I love the influence versus control, right? Because we only have so much influence, right? But we don't leverage it often enough because we're frustrated we don't have control over the situation.
Yeah, and it's unbelievably like psychologically painful when you're looking for control and someone takes it away. But when we use influence and don't get what we want, we can accept that. We might not be delighted with it, but we can at least accept, hey, I maximized my influence. It didn't work out this time. I'll try again next time.
Absolutely. So, Julie, what systems or leadership behaviors create a constant firefighting culture? Because I see that everywhere. It's just, I don't have time to meet with you. I'm putting out fires today. How do practices break that cycle?
Mm. Yeah, there's a lot of putting out fires. Yeah, I mean, how do practices break that cycle? Well, I guess part of that is it's important to look at what are the things that they're putting out fires about all the time, right? Like that's valuable information in and of itself. And if the things that we're putting out fires about all the time are things that are, that shows us where we're missing in training, that shows us where we're missing in resources, that shows us where maybe we're hiring the wrong people, right? If we're constantly putting out fires about, people calling out and calling out in the morning versus, giving notice, like all of that stuff. I think the fires are valuable information and are probably the first places to really start to uncover this is where this team, we need to shore things up.
I love that because it's data. I mean,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You just need to look at the data
Yeah.
and learn from it.
Yeah.
Susie, from your perspective, are there any systems or leadership behaviors that are creating this cycle?
Yeah.
And how do they break that cycle?
100%. And the biggest one is the leadership behavior of not holding your team accountable. And then we take on the extra burden and we carry it all on our own. And that leads to just more burnout, more burnout, more burnout. And so, but it's hard because people look at accountability as conflict. They look at accountability as punishment, and it's not. The other thing that it typically is a systems problem and not a people's problem. So to Julie's point, let me do a diagnosis of the systems in my clinic and my practice and say, what can we fix and improve on? And reduce that capacity overload that we have. Fix that process first, and then things will start to fall into place. But to me, the biggest leadership behavior that perpetuates this is not holding people accountable. And sometimes it's not holding ourselves accountable, if we're being honest about it, because we don't know what that looks like. Maybe we haven't had an example to show us what that looks like. A lot of people are still just given this job and said, have fun, good luck, Godspeed, and so the accountability piece to me is a huge foundational necessity to fighting this.
Yeah. When I think of the firefighting, I tend to go in the direction of being on this hamster wheel, right? Because that's the way I picture it in my mind is this constant hamster wheel that just keeps you running and running and running and going nowhere. And it's so frustrating to me to see people do that to themselves when I just need them to take a step off of that wheel and breathe for a moment and really take a look at the situation. Josh, systems, leadership behaviors, what's creating that culture, and how do we break the cycle?
Yeah. I think everybody on this podcast will agree with me when I say this. I think the vast majority of people who come to veterinary medicine, whether they're coming into a leadership role at the beginning or they start in vet med and end up in some sort of a leadership position like a practice manager, are like really good people with really good intentions. Like we actually really care about each other and we want to do the best that we can for each other. And so once we get into that position of management, we view ourselves as caretakers of the team around us, right? I think that is one of the most magical things that gives us this power and gift to be the exceptional human beings that we are. It also makes us susceptible to Susie's point, taking everything on ourselves, right? And so we tend to view like the quote unquote fires around us as flames threatening to burn down the building. Everything is urgent. And if everything is urgent, nothing is urgent. We're just constantly, again, Brenda, to use your term, running on a hamster wheel, but not getting anywhere. So, like, one of the things that I've really started to recommend to folks in positions like that is creating a system to categorize urgency. Like the simplest one I can think of is one that we helped somebody do recently, which is come up with a category, three categories for needs around the practice. You know, the stuff that people are knocking on your door and coming in a million times throughout the day, or the things that you see happening around the hospital. People are like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Red, yellow, and green, and defining what each one means and what the action will be based on that category. So, for example, like I don't know, the anesthesia machine is broken. We only have one anesthesia machine in the hospital. That's probably going to be a category red, right? And the action is going to be, I will stop whatever I'm doing, and I'm going to make sure that we get, functioning anesthesia as soon as possible. Cool. You're going to have a yellow category, maybe an orange category, whatever. Define what are things that are in that category. What's the action that's going to happen? So, in other words, when you come to me with something, I'm going to ask you, is this red, yellow, or green? And you're going to tell me, and then I'm going to know exactly how I need to respond based on that color. So if it's a green thing, then I can say, hey, you know what, Brenda, thank you so much for letting me know. I'm going to circle back with you next week when I have a couple hours of time. When it's a red thing, I know that I need to stop whatever I'm doing on the computer and go do that. If we have some categorization and common language, that can really help. slow down the hamster wheel a little bit, right? The second thing is we just absolutely need to get better at identifying the tasks, categorizing again the tasks that have to be me, that maybe should be me, that don't need to be me, and that absolutely should not be me. And then any of the tasks in the lower two categories, I'm sorry, pardon my French, get them the hell off your plate. Somebody else should be doing those tasks. Any of the tasks that's in that second category maybe should be me. Identify somebody who's an emerging leader in your practice and
Mhm.
teach them how to do that. Only the stuff that absolutely has to be you should be the things that land on your plate.
I
I
love
love
Justin's
it.
first point because to me, we hear this like put it in language that they understand. What you're talking about is triage. It is the
Yes,
exact same system we have in our ERs. It's triage. It's
it's
red,
triage.
yellow, like red, orange, yellow, green. Like, and
Yeah.
I love that.
That's your next staff meeting, right? I mean,
That's
I think
exactly
this
what
is
it
a
is.
great staff workshop. Come up with that language and learn how to triage the problems within the practice
Yeah.
together, right?
Yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you all for joining us again today, and thanks for flying with us on Flight Plan Quick Consults. And thank you to our generous sponsor, Purina. If today's insights helped you climb to new heights, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your crew. Be sure to tune in next week as we tackle part three, building practices that support leaders instead of draining them. And in the coming week, keep your mission clear, your team aligned, and your practice soaring.